Welcome to the Voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com, where we're going to finish our interview with Douglas Beaumont, author of The Message Behind the Movie Reboot from Ignatius Press. So let's switch over to that interview right now, and that'll take us throughout the entire show.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to have a good story where there isn't at least some kind of conflict, right? Mm-hmm. And, how the protagonist or the hero of the story, if we want to call him that, handles that is going to be a big part of what we think about right and wrong. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies is Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. And a friend of mine went to see it, priest friend of mine, and he came home and said it was the most morally depraved thing he'd ever seen. And I'm like, okay. And I had to explain to him, there were signs, there were certain symbols in Western movies that are used. And my feeling of the movie, my belief in the theme, and when I explained that, he felt better. But my belief of the theme is, if you play with evil, evil will come.
Yeah. And, it's I think the moral depravity thing, sometimes I think it's good in a sense, right? But like if you're dealing with objective evil and you don't show it as evil, mm-hmm. then where is your message? Is evil tame? Is it something that can be played with? No. The shock that people used to experience when you would even just talk about certain things is so gone now,
right?
That you've really got to show somebody like this is what real evil looks like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think the desensitization, that's another issue all to itself. But yeah, portraying evil as evil, I think is the name of the game. That seems to be what Isaiah says when he says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil.
Right.
Keeping that contrast is just so important. In fact, I just remembered Scott Derrickson, the guy that wrote The Exorcism of Emily Rose. He's done some horror himself. And one of the quotes, I think it might even be in the book, is him saying that horror is one of the last genres where you can actually show evil as evil. Everywhere else you've got to, kind of compensate for the culture, but at least with horror, I can actually show evil as something you don't want.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes. And I loved what you did with the Truman Show.
Oh, great! Yeah, that one is. I've gone back and forth on that. It's it's just one of my favorite movies. I love showing it to people after maybe doing this talk because on the surface you just seem to have some things that just so obviously point in one direction, and so much of it is just really like what do you think coming into this? Mm-hmm. And I think that both sides have a lot to say. So I tried to walk the line there, but. I do think that a lot of people, at least again on the more Christian evangelical side, tend to take such a dim view of Hollywood that they automatically take the most negative mm-hmm. Stance that you can, and that movie is a good example of a lot of people doing that.
It's funny, too, because I never picked up on that, but I do think of the Truman Show a lot whenever I'm watching TV, which I don't watch that much, but watching TV, and I'm like, are we getting the Truman Show here? Because there's, it's just fascinating that you can get into that. What are they showing us? And I always talk about it. I watch a lot of news sources. And very few of them are American. One that's become very popular lately is WION, which is World is One News. It's Indian. And I'm seeing more and more people are watching that because they're not trusting American news anymore. And
right.
And some of us used to watch RT America, which went off the air immediately after the war started. And that was fascinating. But So when you're watching some of the American news, you do get this sense sometimes that, am I watching the Truman Show here?
Right. Am I watching it or are they watching me?
Yeah. One of my mentors, in a sense, not really, but someone I've met and I've talked to and everything, is Noam Chomsky, who has warned about, people talk about Trump talking about fake media. He was warning about fake media back in the early 60s.
Sure, yeah.
And Noam Chomsky's he's very much on the left.
Right, but he's still, the left has changed a lot itself. over the years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
I was actually just talking to my daughter this morning about this, about how, the propaganda and everything. But, it used to be, it was when I was growing up, in order to really have a voice, you needed to get on a major TV network, or you needed to get published with a major publisher, or at least get in a newspaper where there was some oversight and there was some, there's going to be trouble if these guys told something false. But now, I mean, any kid with a laptop or an iPad can have his own entire, YouTube channel and website. I mean, I'm guilty. I do too.
Mm-hmm. So do I. Mm-hmm.
But, sure. I mean, who doesn't, right? But it gets to the point now where people have just lost the ability to cite sources. They don't know, I don't know. I like this guy, so I guess I'm going to believe him. And, my daughter was complaining because we're making her do these papers where she's having to do research at a library with real books and write down the publishing information. And I said, yeah, I'm giving you a skill that very few people have anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's true. And you're right. People will say, and you catch that. They say something and you say, okay, where did you get this? Well, that's what they say. Well, that doesn't work. My father was a newspaper reporter for the Boston Globe, so I grew up with knowing all this stuff, and that's where I picked up a lot of my writing skills.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating, and the name of the book, of course, is The Message Behind the Movie Reboot. So this is the second edition, in a sense, of The Message Behind the Movie. Was the first one published by Ignatius too?
No, it was published by Moody Publishers.
Moody Bible Institute.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So they're pretty big. That was my first book, so I was very excited. When Ignatius asked me to redo it, it was kind of funny because I'd sent them like 3 different ideas for a follow up to Evangelical Exodus, and they came back with, well, how about we redo the movie book? And at first I kind of thought, I don't know, I don't really know if I want to go back there, but I realized, well, this would be a great way to like clean up some of the stuff that I didn't really like that came out in the first one, and I could add some new material that I've been thinking about. And plus now all of my books would be as a Catholic. And so I appreciated the ability to reboot this. And Ignatius did a good job. They let me get a lot of material back in that ended up on the cutting room floor, so to speak, with Moody. And I'm a lot happier with this one.
And it's very apropos. The questions are always, and now, of course, I'm assuming when you wrote it, you didn't have streaming video like we do now.
Yeah, that was just barely a thing originally. In fact, the whole idea of show binges and all that wasn't even really around yet. So a lot has changed. I mean, I kept the book primarily focused on the big screen, big theater type films, but the principles in it will go to anything you watch. TV show, anything with a story, this is going to work. Yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to kind of add is one of the things that I will do is I'll look up on IMDb if I'm going to think of seeing a movie. And, I'm also looking at this. I'm going to invest in, 2 hours, so it better be worth it. So if I'll look up at a movie and they have something for like parental guidance, and I'll check that to see if it's something I want to see, because ultimately it's all, do I want to see what's in this? And the other thing is, I've noticed some of these channels. I work with the Brazilians now. I've worked in the past with the Hispanic community, and they can portray the Hispanic community in some of the most vile ways, usually sexually, that I'm going, that's not the way they are. My experience with the Hispanic communities, they tend to be very classy. People don't realize that. And I've seen TV shows where they're like, oh, we'll watch. And I'm like, that's really unfair. That's not the way they truly are. And it really bothers me. But that's true. That's coming out with the culture and trying to press borders, and you go, wait a minute, you're not being accurate either. So that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, and it's difficult because, we get so much of our information off of movies, film, TV, YouTube, whatever, this kind of entertainment industry, that these sort of tropes start coming along, where certain ethnic groups are always portrayed the same way. Dads are always portrayed the same way. Priests are always portrayed, And, to some extent, and I go over this in the book, there's certain genre conventions where, if you see a certain thing or a certain kind of character, you need those to move the story along. We can't get into every single character and do a full background on them so that the story makes sense. But I think what's sad is that some of these tropes end up becoming confused with reality, where, every priest is either this kind-hearted liberal, that everybody loves, or he's, molesting children. Like, that's the only two priests you see. Mm-hmm. Every cop is on the edge. We can just mm-hmm. go down the list. And so, yeah, when it starts referencing an entire ethnic group, that's kind of sad. And I appreciate some of these satirical movies that actually make fun of that. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of like some of the horror movie spoofs that came out in the 90s where, they would literally refer to the black person as the token black guy that's going to die right away, and he does. It's just I love calling out and just kind of making trash out of some of the some of the things that Hollywood is doing, especially when it's by another filmmaker.
And it's, if I'm not wrong, in the movie that you may be referring to was done by the Wayans brothers. Who themselves,
right, yeah.
Who themselves were saying, this is the way you're treating us, and which, it's good when they do that. And Saturday Night Live, when it first came out, used to do that as well. And
oh yeah, they were the kings back in the day.
And well, one of the things that people don't realize is when you do buy into those tropes. I've literally sat at a trial for a young adult who was convicted falsely of shooting someone, and the reason, and I literally spoke to the Department of Corrections at the time, says, I'm going to tell you right now, as a United States Navy veteran, he didn't do it because it's not even possible for him to do. And I explained to them why, but the mother complained right away. They were all from the suburbs, and they've seen all the crime movies, why I don't watch crime shows or crime movies, and they saw everything and just understood it within that context, and no one was there to be able to say what he did was impossible. And it's believed that the person who actually did it is now in jail now, but may have committed 2 murders in the meantime.
Oh, wow.
And it shows, exactly what you say. Those stereotypes can be dangerous too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this was a great interview. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed your book. I'm going to mention it here a couple times. The Message Behind the Movie by Douglas M. Beaumont. And I'll say it again. The Message Behind the Movie by Douglas M. Beaumont, published by Ignatius Press. So I thank you for this time, and I thank you for giving me the chance to read your book.
Well, it was great being on here. Thank you very much.
Have yourself a blessed night. In Cristo vivimos.